Last December, you looked up and asked the same question you ask every year. Where did the year go? It felt like January was a few weeks ago. It felt like summer lasted a weekend. You laughed about it, someone else agreed, and you both moved on. But the real answer is far stranger than a joke about getting older. Because the year didn't go anywhere. Every day still had 24 hours. Every hour still had 60 minutes. The clocks never sped up. Your brain did something else entirely. It stopped recording. Think back to when you were 8 years old. A single summer felt like an era. The gap between one birthday and the next felt like crossing an ocean. A car ride to your grandmother's house felt like a voyage. Now a whole month can vanish while you're answering emails. Why? The first person to seriously ask this question wasn't a neuroscientist. He was a French philosopher named Paul Janet, writing back in 1877. Janet proposed something deceptively simple. You don't judge time by the clock. You judge it as a proportion of your entire life. When you're 8, 1 year is more than a tenth of everything you have ever experienced. It's enormous. When you're 40, that same year is 1/40th of your life. A thin slice, the same 12 months, but a completely different weight. By this logic, the years don't just feel shorter as you age. They feel shorter at an accelerating rate. Each new year is a smaller and smaller fraction of the whole. It's a beautiful idea. It's also incomplete, because if proportion were the whole story, nothing could ever slow time back down. And something can. Here's a test you've already run on yourself without realizing it. Remember the last trip you took somewhere new? A different city? A different country? Maybe just a different routine. While you were there, the days felt full, long, even. But here's the strange part. When you got home, the trip felt huge in your memory, while the ordinary week before, it had almost disappeared. 1 week of novelty felt bigger than a month of routine. The writer and broadcaster Claudia Hammond calls this the holiday paradox. Time in the moment and time in memory are two different clocks, and they often disagree. So what is your brain actually measuring? Not seconds. Memories. Your brain doesn't have a stopwatch running in the background. When you look back and judge how long a period felt, your brain does something cruder. It counts how much new material got recorded. Lots of new memories? That stretch of life feels long. Few new memories? It collapses. It gets compressed like a video file where nothing moves. And this is where childhood comes in. When you were a child, almost everything was new. First snow, first ocean, first betrayal by a friend. First time you understood a joke meant for adults. Your brain was writing everything down, densely, constantly, because it had no idea yet what was safe to ignore. Childhood feels long in memory because it's packed with detail. Then you grew up. And your brain did exactly what brains are built to do. It got efficient. An adult brain runs on prediction. It has seen this commute 10,000 times. It has seen this kitchen, this hallway, this Tuesday. So it stops recording the details and runs on autopilot instead. Autopilot is useful. It saves enormous energy. But it has a cost you never agreed to. Days on autopilot leave almost no trace. 100 nearly identical mornings get filed as one morning. And when you look back at the year, your brain finds only a handful of distinct entries in the logbook. So the year feels short. Not because it passed quickly, because so little of it was saved. You aren't losing time. You're losing the recording of it. There's an even deeper layer, and it's physical. In 2019, Adrian Bejan, a professor of mechanical engineering at Duke University, published a paper arguing that this isn't only about memory, it's about hardware. As you age, your neural pathways grow longer and more complex, and signals physically travel through your brain a little more slowly. The eyes of a child dart around and take in many distinct snapshots per second. An older brain processes fewer mental images in the same objective window, fewer frames per second, and when fewer frames arrive, the world outside seems to be moving faster by comparison. In other words, time isn't speeding up. You are very slightly slowing down, and from inside a slowing camera, everything outside looks like it's rushing. Now flip the whole question around. If routine compresses time, what happens when you remove time altogether? In 1962, a young French scientist named Michel Siffre climbed down into a glacier cave in the Alps and stayed there for 2 months. No sunlight, no clock, no calendar, nothing but his own body to tell him what time it was. When his team finally called him back to the surface, Siffre was certain he had been underground for about 34 days. It had been 63. Half of his time had simply vanished from his internal count. His days, left to run on their own, had stretched and drifted, and his mind had quietly stitched the extra hours together and thrown the seam away, without external markers, without novelty, without events to pin memories to. Time didn't just feel different. It became uncountable. You are running a gentler version of that experiment right now. Every week that looks like the last week is a small stretch of cave. And there's one more twist because your brain doesn't just have 2 speeds, it has an emergency mode. People who survive car crashes and falls often report the same eerie thing. Time slowed down. The world went into slow motion. They saw everything. The neuroscientist David Eagleman wanted to know if that was literally true, so he ran one of the strangest experiments in modern psychology. He had volunteers fall backwards off a tower, dropping more than 100 feet into a safety net, while wearing a wrist display flashing numbers slightly too fast for the eye to read. If time perception truly slowed during the fall, the numbers should have become readable. They didn't. The falling volunteers couldn't read the display any better than anyone standing on the ground. But when asked afterwards how long their own fall lasted, they overestimated it by roughly a third. Their eyes hadn't gained slow motion, their memory had. In moments of fear, a structure deep in your brain called the amygdala starts recording everything in dense, frantic detail. And when you replay a memory that thick, it feels long. Time didn't slow down during the fall, it slowed down in the remembering. Do you see what that means? The feeling of time isn't a measurement, it's a construction, built afterwards out of whatever your brain bothered to keep. Which means the speed of your life is not fixed. It's being decided quietly every ordinary day by how much your brain decides is worth writing down. More than a century ago, the psychologist William James saw all of this coming. In his 1890 masterpiece, The Principles of Psychology, he wrote that the years of youth feel expansive because they are filled with new experiences, and that as habit takes over, the days smooth out, the memories thin, and the years grow hollow and collapse. He wrote that before cars, before television, before a single smartphone existed, he was describing your last few years with unsettling accuracy, from a distance of more than 130 years. And here is the part that should genuinely unsettle you. The modern world is engineered accidentally to speed your time up. Routine is efficient, so your job runs on it. Familiarity is comfortable, so your evenings run on it. And your phone delivers endless variations of the same scroll, the same feed, the same loop. It feels like stimulation. But your memory treats it like fog. Hours in, almost nothing recorded. Have you ever finished an evening of scrolling and been unable to say what you actually saw? That's not a lapse. That's the compression happening in real time. So the years feel faster not only because you're older, they feel faster because your life has become more predictable, and prediction is the one thing your brain refuses to save. But this is the rare piece of bad news that comes with a lever attached. If remembered time is built from novelty, then novelty is how you build more time. Not fake novelty, not another app. Structural novelty, a different route home that forces your brain off autopilot, a skill you're bad at. Because being bad at something means every attempt is new. A conversation with someone whose life doesn't resemble yours. A meal you can't pronounce. A weekend somewhere your brain has no map for. None of this changes the clock. All of it changes the recording. People come back from one unfamiliar week and say it felt like a month. That's not an illusion getting worse. That's the illusion running in reverse, finally working in your favor. There's an old observation among people who study memory. Ask someone to describe last Tuesday and they have almost nothing. Ask them to describe a single day from a trip they took years ago, and they can talk for 10 minutes. The difference was never the length of the day. It was the density of it. So the question was never really where the year went. The year went where every year goes, into whatever your brain kept, and nowhere else. The question is what next year will be made of. Another 12 months of smooth, efficient, unrecorded autopilot compressed into a shrug next December. Or a year with texture, with firsts, with days different enough that your brain has no choice but to write them down. Time is not passing you faster. You are simply leaving fewer fingerprints on it. Next December, you'll look up again. And you can ask the same question you ask every year: where did the year go? Or for the first time since you were 8 years old, you can already know the answer, because this time you'll have kept it.